100 human years ago, humanity exploded onto the galactic scene, settling system after system until they had filled out their borders as much as any of the other unified species empires. And then they just kind of stopped. That's not unusual, really. As much as we all love stories of interstellar wars and extragalactic threats to the very existence of life, well, those things don't really happen. Humanity stopped because they started to butt up against their neighbours, and rather than risk open conflict, their neighbours took their quarrels and their border skirmishes, and they went to the Galactic Council to settle tensions diplomatically. That's the way it's done, and that's the way it's been done for cycles and cycles and cycles. It happened before humanity rose to prominence, and, divine's willing, it'll happen long after they and us and most other extant species fade from this plane. We are a static galaxy. Life is ultimately quite dull, unless you're one of the poor louts on colony or industrial worlds where the smallest accident can destroy entire settlements. Only the smallest new empires, like the humans, are ever even at risk of being conquered, and no one dared touch them. War was simply not the answer. So we find other ways to cope with time. Some, like the Phaleron, press the boundaries of technology. Their children dream of creating the next big breakthrough that will cause a revolution. In my humble opinion, their hopes are somewhat in vain. Technology is progressing exponentially slower as we push the limits of what is even physically possible. Others, including the Cokes peoples and the Plinth collectives, strive for cultural growth and philosophical enlightenment. They find depth and meaning in blank white squares and hyper-postmodern analysis of whatever discordant sounds they call music these days. Their greatest thinkers spent half their lives in a biosuit, floating about the cold vacuum of space in search of answers. As for myself and, well, most of the rest of the galaxy, we find our time is most enjoyably wasted by sport. By happy coincidence and the pressures of evolution, most intelligent species find themselves surprisingly capable of playing the sports of other species. In fact, some have even surpassed the creators of the sport in skill and capability. After all, who can forget the 37,600th Galactic Quidditch Finals, when Centaur's Flying Botches beat the humans' Ireland team, 1,090 to 150. Granted, there are some exceptions. As it turns out, few species are skilled at decaball, played by the 10-armed boulders, since few species have 10 arms and can withstand being tackled by a 15-ton bouldress, whose exoskeleton is primarily composed of iron. I consider myself quite an aficionado of eccentric sports, and I barely escape my only game of decaball with my life. But generally speaking, the rest are quite enjoyable for almost any species. Like I said, I'm rather a connoisseur of the sporting genre. Pick a species and I'll tell you their favourite game, reigning champion, and how many limbs you need to get involved. I've even played most of them, or at least most of the ones I can play. I've gathered wins in sports as diverse as Kultha, football, Sasa, the other football, Jalea, 10-2-6, poker, and even the barely legal war games of the Outer Rim. You'll notice that many human sports appear on this list. As you might have figured by the introductory paragraph of this piece, I have an odd affinity for human sports and games. It seems as though they've dedicated far more of their time to creating and mastering otherwise useless sports than most other species would bother with. Hell, at one point in their history, they had entire stadiums full of people watching ground cars drive in a circle, and they didn't even fly them. They created 2 football games, baseball, basketball, Jayalai, Botaushi, lacrosse, Calcio, Fiorentino, curling, rugby, bowling, tennis, table tennis, badminton, hockey, discus, pole vaulting, skiing, target shooting, archery target shooting, luge, car racing, foot racing, bike racing, water racing, and more. And that's not even including their vast library of less physical games, like board games or virtual games. I've played them all, every last one. I've won most of them too, or at least gotten close. But there's one human sport that remains infamous to this day throughout the galaxy. You see, when a game like Deckable pops up, we sporting fans take it as a challenge. We do our damnedest to put together a team that can win it, according to the rules of the game. Now, one game of Deckable that I barely survived, we won that game and only suffered one hospitalization. It was the first alien team to win that Deckable, but we did it. The humans, however, don't get by on strength, or size, or toughness. Their unbeatable sport does not require brawn, or finesse, or even quick reaction times. You don't fight, throw, kick, catch, or run. You simply sit in a chair, stare at an 8x8 checkered board, and you think as if your life depended on it. And yet, despite our best efforts, we have never beaten a human at chess. That's right, never. Granted, I'm sure they're not sending their absolute dumbest players, just as the Boulders don't send egglings in a game of Deckable. Regardless, it is an absolute embarrassment for the galactic community. The rules, while abstruse, are far from the most complicated in existence. But there's just something about those humans, something about planning so far ahead in the game that they know what move you're going to make before you do, and they know how to respond to it, and they know how to punish you if you don't make that move. The best of the humans are busy thinking about the end of the game before we've even finished considering the first. You might wonder why I even bother trying. After all, it's just a game, right? What could possibly be gained from it? Information, you see, is my real trade. You can learn a lot about a species from the way they relax and play sports. The Boulders are strong, nigh indestructible, but they are slow and methodical and rarely capable of making leaps in thinking. We beat them by being faster and by being tactical. Most of the time, when we try to win these esoteric games, tactics are our best friend. So why is it that our application of tactics fails so strongly against the humans? What quality is it that they have that makes them so inscrutable? How is it that they can fight my species, the paragons of the largest empire in the galaxy, and come away from those border skirmishes with nary a scratch, while our superior forces are left reeling? We live in a static galaxy. I pray it will remain that way, at least until we can win a game of chess.